Okay, so let's start with your entrance into the field portion of track and field.
Well, it happened pretty instantaneously, like when I first started track and field in middle school. So eighth grade was the first year that I tried it, and I was like a middle distance runner, miler, kind of glutton for punishment. Those were the things that we did in PE, right? So I was like, yeah, I can run a mile. That's fine. But I tried high jump and I tried the discus a little bit in eighth grade, but I did like the technical aspect of the high jump. I'm just not very good at it. Like my high school basketball coaches laughed when they learned that I was a high jumper in middle school. So I tried the field part pretty quickly, but didn't have javelin available quite yet that first year. So it didn't stick. It was like I didn't love any of this stuff. It was fun, but it wasn't instantaneously something I could see myself continuing to do. So I thought I would move on.
So that was what, your freshman year? You were on the track side?
Eighth grade was the first year that I tried track, and it's middle school, so it's not the same structure as high school, regional, state, whatever. But I liked being outside. I had mostly been an indoor athlete in my more quote unquote serious sports, so basketball, swimming, and I just loved like being outside in the spring in Washington when the sun was finally coming out and enjoying new kinds of people, like different sorts of people that had different interests. The variety of human that goes out for track and field is just always something I've really been drawn to. There's something for everybody within the same sport. And I saw that really early. We didn't have javelin in middle school, but we did have it in high school. So freshman year is when I finally tried the javelin, but I really didn't think I'd go out for track and field again because I had not found something I loved the first time I tried it.
What was it about javelin that drew you to that? I mean, it's such a specialized portion of the larger track and field environment. I mean, what was it about that specialization?
I think it was the fact that it wasn't available in eighth grade. I wouldn't have gone out for track again, but I really didn't even know about the javelin in eighth grade still. I hadn't even heard the name. So my freshman year geometry teacher, Mr. Ron Heidenreich, he taught for many, many years in the Vancouver School District. His son was actually in my class. Landon was my classmate. So this person, like my teacher, yes, was an excellent teacher, a really good mentor, but also had known me for a couple of years as an athlete generally. So when he said to me, as not just my geometry teacher, but the track coach in class, like, Kara, you should try the javelin, I thought this person isn't just throwing that out there. They have seen me kind of grow as an athlete. And this is, retrospective as well as more accurate. Like I know that that's what his mindset was. Uh, but as a freshman in high school, I was like, sure, something new. I don't really have a plan for the spring. I thought I would go out for golf, and that didn't work out. And so then I thought maybe I'll take a season off. I've always been an athlete every second of every day of every year. So let me take a little break, but I got bored really quickly. And 10 days into the track season was like, yeah, that new thing sounded cool. Let's try the javelin.
Do you think it was less intimidating for you coming in and knowing that no one knew how to throw?
I don't know that I realized that nobody knew how to throw. I really was just trying something new, and again, really liked the people from eighth grade, like the different, just kind of person that wants to do something that's not mainstream. So I didn't realize that there wasn't a ton of knowledge. I had a good javelin coach in high school. He had thrown in his own high school career, I think a little bit at the junior college level, and just had some really good input really early. Now I know, technically the things that were wrong, but I did have a really good start to my javelin experience because of that coach and because of the people that just had really great attitudes in my training group and the people that were also trying this one weird thing. The thing that attracted me to the javelin was the individual nature of it, the kind of puzzle of you can do so many things slightly differently and get a different outcome. And that was just really clear very early. Like the margin for error is fairly small. So the repeatability of the movement, the mastery of like your own body and your own arm position and your own like hip drive and things like that just spoke to me really, really quickly, that I could control the outcome with my input on an individual level. And I'd had pretty frustrating team experiences as a teenager at that point. And I loved swimming. It's the hardest sport I ever did, but like I did have that individual input equals individual output experience with wonderful, wonderful teammates in the pool. I just had more natural talent in the javelin. So all of a sudden I like was marrying the individual sport part that I loved of swimming with something that I could be outside in the sunshine with my friends, actually talk to them instead of having your face in the pool all the time, and see the benefit of my own hard work come out in distance.
I mean, the benefit of your own hard work was 3 Washington State high school championships. I mean, that
Yeah,
you learn the sport and are immediately like the best in the state.
almost, yes. I think that like the volatility of how I performed at major championships throughout my career is one of the harder things for me to wrap my head around still. Because I did go to state freshman year and have a 15-foot personal best to get second as a freshman. Like I was good that season, but I wasn't great. And I still lost by 30 feet. Like the girl that won the state title was actually going to school on a basketball scholarship, but she threw 165 feet to win the javelin state title in 3A in Washington. So I never forgot that, because I was like, people choose to leave this, people choose other routes, even if they are the best in the state. And that's a really interesting thing to me as a young girl, to see talent and see somebody choose their other talent. Like it was really powerful to me to like keep choosing the javelin, because I just had this really clear example in front of me as somebody who didn't and had success anyway. And that's just a neat like individual human experience. Like you do get to choose what you're doing. Winning state the next 3 years was really important to me. And I think that it kind of was foreshadowing for sort of the rest of my career. Like winning conference was something that I cared a lot about, and NCAA championships. But after like the state level, after kind of the first layer of championship meets, I got in my head a lot, like every single time, about those bigger opportunities. And I should have been better earlier at carrying over the same strategies from the really good experiences at the state level or conference level. So I loved it, but I remember having this just breakdown in my mom's car because I'd had a basketball tournament and I rolled my ankle the week before the state, or the state track meet. And she was like, Kara, it's going to be fine. Like, we will create a strategy, we will form a plan, and you'll be okay. And she was right. But I just cared so much about that title that I could not regulate my own emotions as like a 16-year-old and understand that the outcome was not the most important thing. She was just like rolling her eyes and being the wonderful supportive mother at the same time that she always has been. But I think about that moment a lot, that it meant so much to me that I was like distraught, absolutely inconsolable about this like slight swelling in my ankle. And then I won state anyway. Like, talk about dramatic from the outset.
I mean, I feel like I talk to a lot of athletes about that strive for perfection mindset. I mean, and it starts in high school, and that's how they get scholarships to play in college, and that's how they get on Olympic and Paralympic teams. I mean, that drive, it sounds like dramatic when you're talking about your high school persona, but it paves the way for your work ethic going forward.
Mhm.
And so it's
Yeah,
funny that you touch on that, because that obviously turned into what ended up driving you to 4x Olympian and like one of the best javelin throwers in US history. I mean,
for
like,
sure. Yeah. And I look at the picture of that state championship not often, but fairly often. And there's a brace on my ankle, right? And it's my block ankle. And so it's important that it's supported. And you're exactly right that the drive, the need to do your best in the highest pressure situations, like is very much what occupies your mind in all of those training scenarios, preparing for that moment too. So when you live in your head in those moments every day that you are working toward that goal, when something goes wrong, it can be really hard to deal with, especially at a young age when you don't have the perspective that you need to actually form the plan on your own. But luckily, with support systems that can draw you back from the edge, like that's how athletes improve and grow also and harness that drive.
When did you get on Purdue's radar? And who else was recruiting you?
I was recruited by Stanford, Mizzou, University of Washington, and Purdue. So the recruiting process was, of course, very different than it is today. We didn't have the social media like jersey wearing photo op like at the school when we went because it just didn't exist. And yeah, so pretty typical timeline for the period of time that it was right before my senior year of high school. I started getting phone calls, emails, had filled out the questionnaires on people's websites and stuff like that. Coach Rodney Zudowick is phenomenal, still a wonderful mentor to this day. And he was actually the only coach of those four schools that didn't come for a home visit to Washington. I had a training partner teammate at Purdue when I eventually went there named Lindsay Blaine, who won NCAA championships in 2007, like a fantastic fellow female javelin thrower, like at a school that had a rich history of javelin already. And that was a reason that I decided to go to the school. But I met Lindsay my junior year, her senior year, when she was already going to Purdue. And just like at a meet, she was in a lower classification in Washington than me. Like her school was really small, but we threw against each other at one competition. And when I asked her where she was going, she was like, Purdue. And I said, I've never heard of that school in my entire life. So when Coach Zudowick called me, when he started like recruiting me, that just immediately was like, there's this other person from Washington who's very good, who I know I would do well with, who's already at that school. And this coach seems wonderful. And it was just like an incredibly good atmosphere for both of our growth as javelin throwers, and eventually as humans. But that's kind of right when I feel like they were on my radar before I was on theirs, but it wasn't real until I kind of had that flashback moment to like, oh yeah, that Lindsay girl is there. She would be a training partner. This would be a really great experience for both of us, because everywhere else that was recruiting me didn't have a training partner. Like people were graduating, or there were no other javelin throwers at all, or I would just have been by myself, which I think would have been okay, but Purdue is just a much better option. And I wasn't afraid of going far away from home. And Coach Zudowick just was so clear in his support of the way that I was still being a well-rounded athlete. I didn't quit any other sports when I started getting recruited for javelin. I'm a huge proponent of multi-sport as a young athlete, and I didn't start getting injured until I became just a javelin thrower in college. So knowing that he saw that effort, again, retrospectively, it's easier to see that that was very true. But I would like go to the gym to run in the morning before school during swimming season to get ready for basketball. And every time he called, it would be East Coast time, and he's calling Washington. So it's like 7 a.m. or earlier, but I'm already at the gym. And like he saw that behavior and he was just like really supportive of it. And that continued in, of course, healthy ways in college, but he just seemed to know who I was in a way that would continue to grow throughout the college experience.
What is the atmosphere and kind of representation of javelin at the collegiate level?
So going to school in Indiana, Purdue University, there is not very much javelin at the high school level in the Midwest. So there were many experiences where we'd have a home meet and people from like Chicago would come to Purdue and their coaches would come up to me and say, Kara, can you teach my athlete to throw the javelin real fast? Like I'm a competitor and they're asking me to coach like last minute, which, you know, knowing what I know now, like it's not that weird. At the time I was like, how the heck did these people get here like to the javelin? And it's really just about like scoring some team points or getting them experience. Like I fully support the human development part of them just trying the javelin, but in the NCAA, especially at the time, were very few women who had thrown in high school and then gone to college for it. Most people, and this is still true to this day, who eventually get really good at javelin, try it in college for the first time. And yeah, so it's much more competitive than it used to be, which is very fun to see. It was starting to be really competitive. I had kind of my arch rival of college, Rachel Yurkovich at University of Oregon. We'd met in high school, had thrown against each other for a couple years. Like she's one grade younger than me, but I redshirted after an injury. So we ended up graduating at the same time and continued kind of that rivalry into the professional ranks. So she and I definitely pushed each other at the end of college to kind of start the trend toward the 58, 59, almost 60-meter throws as collegiate athletes. That's much more common now, 60. The collegiate record was broken this year by 2 meters by a Bohemian athlete named Rema Otapor, 64.19, and that was the Olympic standard. Like that's what put her on the team for Paris. So to see where the NCAA has gone from when I was in it is really neat, but I definitely feel like it was part of the early experiences of women throwing almost 60 meters in college because I threw 61.56 as a collegiate athlete. And that was an outlier in my college career by a couple meters, but those 58, 59-meter throws were starting to be more common when Rachel and I were pushing the pace a little bit.
When you look back at your college career, I see 3-time Big Ten champion, 2-time NCAA All-American. I mean, those are exceptional stats for a college career for a sport that you started, what, less than 5 years prior?
Yes. Yes. I made some really big mistakes in college, and everyone does, right? So that's fine. I never won an NCAA championship. So Rachel won my junior and senior year, her junior and senior year. I was fifth the junior year and second senior year. So when I talk about like those Big Ten titles meant a lot to me, it meant a lot to the team. I was a team captain for 3 years, which meant everything. And the only reason that happened is I got injured that first year, right? I got elected captain and then I missed the outdoor season and then I got elected captain again and elected captain again. So I cared a lot about supporting my team. That happened at Big Tens. When it became about me, it became about an NCAA title. The pressure was too much. But every time I failed at NCs, I would go to the overall USATF national championship a couple weeks later and do much better. Like I just needed this rip the Band-Aid off of the stressful, nervy experience to be like, okay, get back to yourself, like calm down, relax a little bit, trust what has been going on, trust the training, trust your coach, trust yourself, and then do so much better at USATF nationals. So I did have a great college career, but I am very unsatisfied with it in a lot of ways. And I think that that speaks to the drive post-collegiately as well. I would have loved to be an NCAA champion, like to have a training partner who won NCs in the year that I was injured, that I redshirted from the outdoor season, was very cool and personally extremely difficult, right? Like you could be two things at once. I'm so proud of you and I'm so frustrated with my own experience. Like I want that. That's a very normal thing to feel. And Lindsay and I have gotten to talk about that in later years, which is really fun to have had these, it's just sport, but it's life at the same time. And to grow as young adults in the same way, parallel to each other with such different experiences, was a really neat thing to inform our friendship later in life. So I love that. The same thing is true with Rachel. Like we're good friends to this day and get to kind of share about the heartbreak on opposite sides of our careers. Like when one person wins, the other person doesn't, but there's no defense in track and field. All you can do is your own best. So there's no reason to be a jerk about it. Like if you're a bad sport, it's completely on you because it's you against you. You're not affecting anybody else's results. And I love that about the field events, that there's such opportunity for friendship because everybody has their own moment of glory. you each have 1 minute at a time to be the best, and there's nothing I can do in that 1 minute to mess you up. And if I do, I am the worst person in the world. So it's just such a clear atmosphere to be close to people who just happen to do this one weird thing as well. And that's what I take from my college career. Like, I would have loved to be NCAA champion. I could have thrown a little bit further, but I like to tell kids and anybody that is looking at 20 years of javelin throwing that I wasn't the best until I was. Like, I just kept trying my best. And that's completely okay for it to not have come out in the collegiate ranks. Like, I had a coach that very much supported my long-term career, and I knew that at the time, and I'm really, really grateful that he set me up the way that he did. I should have performed better at NCAA championships. Like, I was primed too. That was all mental. But he had an eye on world championships, Olympic games. Like, I made the Beijing team my junior year, and then got to come back to the cocoon, the support system of college, which was really important for me as an individual, like just the kind of athlete, the kind of person that I am, to go back to that safety net and then continue to grow from there, have the perspective of the big, huge thing, and then go back to what I knew. So yeah, I'd only thrown for 5 years when I first won the Big Ten title, but I chose scenarios, I think, whether on purpose or on accident, that would let me grow in the way that I needed to, and had people around me that also recognized that. And that was definitely Purdue, Coach Zudowick, Lindsey Blaine, my other like female thrower teammates, because they were wonderful. So it could have been better, but it was exactly what I needed to keep throwing forever.
When you look at your college career, it's so funny to me that you just gloss over the fact that you were an Olympian at 20 years old. That is hysterical to me. You're like, yeah, I went to Beijing, I represented the US, and then I just went back to college. What was that time in your life like when you were suddenly a college athlete, and then you were on Team USA's radar, and then you were going to China to represent
Mhm.
the country?
So I'd made like junior level teams. There's like development processes throughout USATF, kind of ranks as you're an aging athlete, a developing athlete. And my first one was with Rachel. We were gold and silver at Pan Am Juniors in 2005 in Windsor, Ontario. The second one, I had a really, really frustrating sophomore year. I threw far early and then made a lot of like just poor life choices that didn't work out on the runway, but happened to make another team, NACAC under 23 championships. So North America, Central America, Caribbean, this like regional, but big, like smaller than Pan American Games, but regional competition. So NACAC under 23s was in 2006. And the people on that team are some of my good friends to this day, including my husband that I met on that team, like on the beach. He was the shot putter, kind of at the same level, but at the University of Idaho. And so just the experience, like the love at first sight part of it, the complete, like, I was a disaster as an athlete at that competition, but got my life partner, like the person that I'm supposed to be with out of the experience, was just all of the same stuff from having a great training partner in college, having a rival that was my friend, like to meet wonderful people who also happen to do this one weird thing, throwing implements, was really great. So I hadn't had the international experiences that I wanted in terms of throwing far, doing well, but I had made incredible friends, developed incredible support systems, knew other people across the country that were my age that were also shooting for these big goals. And that really informed my mindset when I had a lumbar stress fracture in my L5 in 2007. So I had just like been compromising my low back by throwing the weight, which is the indoor version of the hammer. My coaches wanted me to throw it in indoor season. I did my best, but I was not strong enough, like not technically sound enough, and was also trying to throw the javelin at the same time. So just compromising my low back at every turn, and it turned into an L5 stress fracture. I still had that support system. I did not handle the injury well. I was a mess. Like I didn't do well at all. So that season, which was 2007, was a lot of who am I? This is the first time my athletic identity has been ripped away from me. I know that I have people around me that are supporting me, loving me. Like my friend Molly at the time was just my favorite person. We spent almost every moment together, and we're both going through injuries. So, like, we're battling our own demons, but together. And I needed that time to mess up, be a disaster, like just be a college student for a second, I think. And I couldn't do anything to heal faster either, like looking back on it. So I just needed to step away. I could have done it in a healthier fashion, but getting through that time period and then being able to refocus, get to Beijing, and like have all of that experience, like dig myself out of a hole in a way that was like on my terms with the support system that I had created, and with Russ by my side, who also had the same goals, plus all those friends from the other teams and my incredible teammates who also had the same goals. Like Lindsay had won NCAAs in 2007 and then was also shooting for the Beijing team in 2008. So we were two women in West Lafayette, Indiana, trying to throw the javelin as far as we possibly could in the pursuit of an Olympic team. And yeah, it was 2008 was such a cool example for me that setting big, measurable goals, even if they're audacious and nobody else believes you, is sometimes the best way to go. Because I had to throw a personal best by 5 meters after a year of injury and not really having understood my technique before that. Like part of my injury was compromising my low back instead of using my shoulder to throw the javelin and my upper back. So all of that learning and intensified focus after an injury, because it was the Olympic year, just turned into the coolest experience of becoming an Olympian. So the win wasn't necessarily the Olympic team. It was my understanding of self and understanding of technique in that year. And it, like, the validation of becoming an Olympian 100% was important. But it also served as like a refocus of there's still more work to do. Like you still didn't make the final. You did absolutely not perform in China. But now you know what the experience will be like in the future. And look at where you came from and where you got to. That's super cool. Like do that in a different way without the massive injury moving forward, and you'll be okay.
I mean, you follow that up with London, Rio, a silver at Pan Am in 2015. I mean, that stretch, I mean, that was a few years later, but and in the time difference, you set an American record. I mean,
Yes.
that was a crazy career few years.
The trajectory after college was very wild. Yes. I made the World Championship team in 2009. Again, had a really great international experience in terms of the people. Rachel and I were roommates at that Worlds, and she made the final and I didn't, which was a really just, I had the experience of Lindsay winning NCAA championships and me being injured to inform this, like, you did your job. I did it. Like, I'm sad, but I'm happy for you. Like, I can do both things at the same time. And that was a surprising thing that I had the experience to handle, right? And that's always going to be a thing with friends on teams when you're an individual athlete, but you still get to be a part of other people's stories. So I love that that has always been a theme of my career. Because it's up to me, again, to be a good sport. And it's bigger than the result in that moment. It's about your support of your people that are around you. 2012. So I broke the American record in 2010. It was my first full professional season. And not only did I break the American record, but I ended up like 7th in the world overall that year. I was 2nd in the first season of the Diamond League, which is our biggest like professional series of competitions. And second to the world record holder, who told me later, Kara, I was scared of you in 2010. And she's my wonderful friend, Barbara Spachakova. For her to say that, like admit that out loud, is a huge deal. Because I was just so consistent in a way I never had been in college. And I chalked that up to, a new coach who had different ideas, like how sometimes new stimulus is exactly what you need to make a jump, but also sleep. Like I was a post-collegiate athlete. Russ and I were living at the Olympic and Paralympic Training Center in Chula Vista, California. And just in a dorm, like at your training venue, training twice a day, like just consistency and not a whole lot of stress otherwise. You don't have that many expenses. So while you might not have that much income as a young athlete, you also aren't really going anywhere. You're just spending your life training and eating for free. So just a really great atmosphere to learn in. But I also had an injury that season that I had to overcome kind of early in the spring. And I took that with me too, that my sprained ankle in high school, my back injury before I made the Beijing team, and then this other back injury in 2010, right before a season that truly set me up for the rest of my professional career, to just burst onto the scene was a huge deal when many post-collegiate athletes struggle right away. So I was very focused on that and had just luckily these experiences of create a plan, stick to it. You're going to be okay if you put the work in every day and put one foot in front of the other. After that time period, yes, I made the London team in 2012. I tore my ACL at Olympic trials in 2012. So when I said for Beijing, like, just don't have that big injury and you're going to be okay, I had a worse one, worse timing going into the second Olympics. And that one was really, really hard because being 22 in Beijing, it's okay to, not perform well. If you're young, it's your first time, deer in headlights. Being 26 and having the season that I did in 2010, at the end of a sponsorship period, to have an ACL injury and go anyway. Like I competed on a torn ACL because we didn't have an Olympic alternate in the women's javelin. I wasn't taking anyone else's spot. I wasn't going to be at my best, but there was no one else that could have stepped in and done it for me. I would never have denied somebody that opportunity. If I knew that I was injured, I would have let an alternate go, but we just didn't have one qualified. So why not try? You don't get to be a two-time Olympian if you don't go to the Olympics 2 times. And it just was so hard to know that this was my prime and I was going to be at a deficit and I was facing the biggest injury of my life that required surgery. Simply the fear of the pain at the block with a torn ACL was something that I look back on and I think I maybe shouldn't have done that. Like I dug myself into quite a hole emotionally so that when I did have surgery, the only thing that I remembered was the fear and the pain. I trained on that for 6 weeks. Like I threw the javelin on a torn ACL for a long time and was scared of it the whole time. So that's really what I carried forward. And I'm proud of trying. I threw 4 meters further than I had in Beijing, but I maybe could have come back faster from that first surgery if I hadn't put myself through that.
The fact that on a torn ACL, you still threw further than you did in Beijing, what do you chalk that up to?
I think mental fortitude for sure. I'd been a professional for 2 years at that point. So just general fitness, general training, more understanding of the technique served me well in a high pressure situation. But I also I had to be intense. I had to be intentional. I had to just be so gritty to get to that point that I was going to be better anyway. I wasn't scared of the result. I was scared of the pain, but I knew that if I was going to be here and going to try, I needed to hold it together technically and do my best. Because if I'd thrown worse or fouled all 3 throws or whatever, like, what was the point of that? Like, I needed to be as tough as I possibly could. And I learned that I'm very, very tough. So it was a success in many ways, and something that I would do differently, I think, if I could do it again.
A lot of when I talk about sports psych at specifically an elite athlete level, there's always a sports psychologist present or some kind of psychologist that is working with these athletes that is giving them visualization exercises or meditation. What was the visualization process like when you're competing at the highest level on a torn ACL?
I employed an emergency sports psychologist. Her name is Wendy Borlavi. She's wonderful. And she helped me so much by like, this is your choice. You don't have to do this. And I think now, like I said, there would have been a lot of power in saying, no, I need to take care of myself. But there was also a lot of confidence in saying, I can do whatever I can do in that moment, and that's enough. So yeah, visualization, I think it was very much down to each and every throw be as tough as you possibly can. And we talked about that a lot. And that carried over into rehab too, because she gave me a lot of strategies to not distract completely from the pain, but to kind of live in it and accept that it's part of the healing process.
I read that when you were talking about consistency earlier, that I'm planning on that being kind of the overarching storyline message of your episode. I thought it was so impressive that you have outdoor championship titles from 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2014, and 15, and 17, and 18, and 22. That makes you the only American woman to have ever been so dominant in a field event. I mean, that is an insane career on paper. And you are underwhelmed?
No, no, I'm extremely proud of my national championship podium run. That's one of the things that I think when you think about the development of the event in the United States, the context of American javelin throwing in the world, that was what my barometer had to start at, right? How well am I doing at the national championship level? Because no one has ever been dominant in the world except for Kate Schmidt in the 80s, who was incredible, but like she's a blip on the radar. Like I don't have an example right now of somebody who is crushing it on the world stage from the United States. So I need to start with not dominance, but really great performances at national championships. Like it always mattered to me when the pressure was on to do well at those competitions. And I had the NCAA championship failures leading into these USAs. Like I think that the pattern for a young athlete of establishing success on a big stage early is super important, whether it's the Olympics or World Championships or just the national stage. And since I didn't do that at NCAAs, but I did manage to accomplish it at national championships, at USAs, I just kept that going. Like it's just so much easier to be comfortable and be confident when you've taken a step, whether it's accidental or intentional, towards success really early. And that's what I did at Beijing 2008 Olympic trials by winning in a, Olympic trials record of 58:44. Maggie Malone broke it this year at 64:58. Like it's just a drastically different world. But that was the context that I had. That was the I can do better than anyone else has ever done here if I do what I know I can do consistency wise. Like if I hit my positions, if I do what I've done in practice and relax a little bit, enjoy the experience like I didn't at NCAAs. I was way too stressed out. I credit Coach Judah with that a lot. Again, he always had my long-term career in his mind in terms of training, in terms of mentality. There were multiple times where he couldn't come to the national championship for the USATF version. And I did great anyway. And he's the first person I called anyway, and he knew exactly what was going to happen because he had like prepared me for that moment in my personal career rather than NCAA, like needing to have some sort of ego with the Purdue name on my results. He was like, I'm happy for you, and you are going to the Olympics now. You are going to Berlin to World Championships now. I knew it. Like, I'm so proud of you. And it was just this extremely cool selfless experience from a coach that made me who I am very early in my career. So, uh, yeah, he established that pattern in a lot of ways of making podiums. But even in 2013, when I was 9 months post-op, my first ACL surgery, I was third at national championships. And that was the year that I was like, I must keep this going. A, I always want to win nationals, but B, to be on the podium from 2008 to 2024, missing 2020 and 2023 because I retired, is incredible. And I'm so, so, so proud of that. And I know that, like, watching people stay in the sport longer and be on those podiums older than 24 is the thing that I'm most proud of in my career, because I was the oldest in 2010 at 24 years old. And I remained the oldest until this year at 38. So there were not people that were older than 24 years old when I started throwing the javelin, continuing to throw the javelin. And now there are primarily older than 24-year-olds in those competitions.
I mean, so infrequently in sport as a whole, but specifically elite sport, post-collegiate sport, do you see careers that are 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 years? I mean, that is prime consistency. When do you think you realized that you had 20 years of a career in the books?
I first really understood, like, when I was 32, yeah, in 2018. As soon as I had thrown the javelin for half my life, and I would go to, like, high school camps, like the Air Force Academy here in Colorado Springs has big summer camps every year. And when my coach was Dana Lyon, who was at the Air Force Academy, I would, like, go to practice during camp and have a little demonstration practice for the campers, right? Like, it's my practice, but I'm here during camp and they're watching right after lunch or whatever. And that's always really fun for me. I've done that a couple different times at the different universities that I've trained at. I'm always happy to talk to the kids, like, show them an in real time example of, like, what it can look like to just improve a little bit. Like, I'm not throwing ridiculous distances in practice. I've never been a practice thrower. But yeah, as soon as I was twice their age, some of these campers, as soon as I was 30 and there were 15-year-olds in the camps, I was like, you can do this for a long time. Like, let me like, lift the veil up and tell you that I am double your age and doing the same thing that you're doing. Like, I want to encourage you that it doesn't have to be just high school. It doesn't have to be just college. Like, if you love this, keep dabbling in it. You'll understand it more as you just gradually, as you go through your experience as a javelin thrower. And I promise you'll get better even later than you think that you will. So I really love to rip that Band-Aid off and be like, I'm 38. Surprise. And I'm still, like, throwing really far, because yeah, humans can do anything. Women can do anything for as long as they want to. Mhm.
I saw that you didn't medal at world championships until you were 36.
Correct.
I mean, that's incredible
Thank you.
to have the career that you did at such a high level and have it sustain for so long. And then just go, okay, I've done this. I'm going to retire now.
Mhm. There were a lot of years in the middle. Like, the only world championship team I ever missed was 2013, because I got on the podium after my first ACL surgery, but I didn't throw the world championship standard. I was, like, still not healthy enough to do so. In 2015, like, winning that Pan Am medal, my husband medaled at the same Pan American Games. Like, I'd taken his last name, and I couldn't get people to understand that I was Kara Winger, not Kara Patterson, like, in 2015 in our first year of marriage. So he was also on that Pan Am team. And we got there I showed up and I had a Patterson bib, like my name printed for me. And I was like, guys, no, that's not my name. How many times do I have to say this? And there was no time to print another one. I'm sure that I missed like a piece of paperwork, right? Like I could have gone about it differently. It wasn't anyone else's fault but mine. But at the time, I'm stressed. My competition is the next day. I'm like, dang it. Like I keep telling people that this isn't my name. And Russ goes, oh, Kara, you can wear mine because we have the same last name. And so I wore his winger bib and I got silver. He, a couple days later through the discus, made sure to wear the same name tag and got bronze. And so like those two medals for us were so cool. Later that season, we also both went to NACAC Senior Championships. So we had met in 2006 at NACAC Junior Championships. He did well, I did not. But in 2015 at NACAC Senior Championships, we both won our respective events. He won the discus and I won the javelin. And they loved, like 9 years later, we met at the junior version and now we're both winners of the senior version. And like the press in Costa Rica was just so pumped about that. It was really fun. That put us both on the world championship team in Beijing. He had like come to Beijing in 2008 to spectate after getting fifth in the shot put at the Olympic trials. So just barely missed that Olympic team, but came to watch me at my first Olympics. And then to be on the world championship team at the same stadium at the Bird's Nest in 2015 back in Beijing and be roommates. We got to be roommates at training camp because we're married and then at the world championship team because we're married. So all of a sudden, I have this comfort zone, like this favorite person in the world who just boosts my confidence tenfold. And I finally made a final. I finally made it past the first round of the World Championships into the final and got eighth. So every final that I ever made at a Worlds, I made top eight. Like if I put myself in that position, I could do well in the final. It was just so big for me. I did work with sports psychologists. I did everything that I think that I could have to be mentally prepared and physically prepared for those experiences. But what I know now after 2024 is I'm not a championship competitor. I'm just not. Like I'm consistent. I can throw far every season. You talk about like being on the podium for a long time at nationals. I also love to look at the times of year that I threw far. It wasn't consistent each season, which makes it difficult to plan for that major championship, right? But I am really proud of having really far marks in April, May, June, July, August, and September, depending on the season. Like I had a great career for so many years, and there were many years in the middle where I knew I could still succeed, but I didn't have a clear vision about what my true need was in the sport. It's just kind of world championship after world championship, Olympics after Olympics, not quite ever being my best when it mattered. So having the deadline of knowing that I was going to retire at the end of 2022 is what brought the best out in me.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
finally got me that medal. Yeah.
yeah. I saw that you own the record for most career throws over 200 feet in the history of US women. And I was looking at your career stats. I don't remember what website it was on, but I mean everything was in the 195 to 200, 210 feet range consistently across the board. The entire column was 200 plus. I mean, that is the epitome of consistency for so long.
Yeah.
I mean, you own all of these records for dominance and consistency. How do you think that your relationship with your sport changed over the course of 20 years of consistency?
I think that what I eventually understood about myself is that I just loved being part of it. Every time I went to a Diamond League and didn't make the top eight or top six and didn't get six throws, I was devastated. but I still got to hang out in a rose garden and drink rosé with my competitors. Like I still got to see the world. I still got to spend weeks in Prague going to lakes with Barbara, like training with the world record holder. I still got to hang out in Germany and eat white asparagus in May and live in an Airbnb and bike everywhere with like the worst bicycle seat and tiny, tiny peg pedals because I didn't have the cycling shoes, right? I still got to be this citizen of the world. And the consistency I'm so proud of through injury. So I had an ACL surgery in 2012, a shoulder surgery, my left shoulder in 2015 that derailed like the next couple years in some really big ways, and then another ACL surgery in 2020. And I was afraid of knee pain. I was afraid of hurting my knee again for many years. I just knew that if I could get to 60 meters again, 61 meters again, 62 meters again, I could go to these competitions. I could be a part of it. I could participate. Like that's truly what my motivation was through, especially my first injury. And I always wanted to be the best at the major championships, but I just had that fear for a decade. And the only thing that removed it was knowing that I was almost done. So I'm so proud of the consistency because I just wanted to be there, be in the mix, be witnessing other people's greatness too, and have a chance at breaking through my own fear and breaking through my own difficulty. I, when I finally threw a personal best at the end of my career, after 12 years of not doing so, like that indicates to me that I didn't reach my full potential, that there were a lot of quote unquote wasted years in the middle because I didn't have that the same fire, the same sharpness, like the same need for super far throws that I had early in my career. I was just always holding back a little bit, always a little bit afraid of what could happen to my leg, like going through the first injury and knowing that both times I tore my ACL, I was throwing a javelin. Like that can happen at any moment to any athlete. But I just could never quite break through that mental barrier of post injury until I knew that I didn't have to be brave for that much longer. So I don't regret, I did a lot of work to try and get through that. It's not like I just ignored the problem, but I just couldn't. And I think that's okay. It's okay to be different than other people, and it's okay to have done my best, even if that wasn't ultimately being a 70-meter javelin thrower or winning an Olympic medal or even making an Olympic final. I did the best I could with what I had, and I loved being a part of everyone else's stories and everyone else's experience too, and getting to meet people that do the same thing that I do all over the world.
When Team USA elected you as the flag bearer for Tokyo, when did you know that that you were going to be chosen, and what was that full experience like? I mean,
Yeah.
that's an incredible honor.
It's incredible. I never not cry about it, so bear with me. um,
Yeah.
so I tore my ACL the second time in August of 2020. I had surgery at the end of August of that year. So the irony was it was really weird because if the Olympics hadn't been postponed due to COVID, I would have been like at the games, right? If I'd made the team when I hurt my knee. And it was just such a better scenario than 2012 to tear it a full year beforehand, but still just not the fourth Olympics that I had in mind. Like still this I planned for this to be my last Olympic team. I was finally going to make the final. I thought that third time was the charm in Rio, but instead I threw the furthest ever 13th place, which is one spot out of the final. I am the furthest javelin thrower to compete at the Olympics and not make the final. Still, Paris was like really good and really close, but I'm still the person who has thrown the furthest and not made top 12 and had a chance at a medal at the Olympic Games. So going to Tokyo, at 11 months post-op, my second ACL. It was like a miracle of a healing process. Like my PT was incredible. Kelsey Whitman, to go through knee rehab during COVID when she was the person that I saw every day after not seeing people every day during COVID was so special. Like she's just such a huge part of that experience for me. And it was an absolute miracle. And I know that our personal relationship was a reason for that. Because I knew how to rehab, but she made it just more fun, more intentional, more meaningful to like go and show up every day. I know that I was physically ready to make the final in Tokyo. Mentally, I wasn't quite there. And we've talked about that. So to be 15th at 11 months post-op was still a huge success. If I'd thrown what I threw at trials, I would have made the final, but like that, anybody can say that. A lot of people have the same experience. That afternoon, after, the same devastation I had always felt, like I told my strength coach that day, like, this feeling is not unusual. Unfortunately, I know exactly how to be this disappointed. But if I'm going to feel this way next year, one more time, I don't want to compete anymore. Like I'm done feeling this devastation. And that's the equivalent of having surgery and then buying a house, right? Like I was immediately after the competition, I'm feeling my most raw. And I'm saying that out loud to him, to Jamie, to my strength coach of 14 years, like my brother. But I went to the pool that afternoon. I just wanted to go swim really hard and like feel my feelings and be in the water. And I had said that to him. I wrote my like sappy Instagram post. I did my best, like, thank you all for your support, blah, blah, blah. And then the moment I walked out on the pool deck, my original athletic trainer from Purdue, her name is Kara Kessens. She's the head athletic trainer for USA Volleyball. She had been checking in with me all year. She's my dear friend. Like we have dinner when she comes to Colorado Springs for USA Volleyball stuff. Like she had just been aware and caring and taking care of me all year. I got to see her every day in the village. This person who put me on my first Olympic team. And she was on the pool deck that day. Like it was just her and one other athlete in the pool. And she'd known that I was going to compete that day. She'd been checking in. She was so excited. And I looked at her and she just hugged me. And I sobbed and I got to be 19 for a second. With this person who knew me before I made any teams. Like it was the most special moment of all of my Olympic experiences. And after that swim, after Kara was there for me, even though she wasn't there for me, is when I saw my name on the flag bearer ballot. Like I opened my email and I was like, are you kidding me? This is crazy. The women of track and field had already voted me team captain, which made my life before the flag bearer stuff. Like they're the reason that I was on the flag bearer ballot, because the women of track and field, who are also different and varied and amazing from me, chose me, saw my journey, saw my sharing of my knee experience, and rewarded like the effort that I had put in to be present even in my own devastation for so many teams before that. So yeah, I was devastated. I was supported by these people who'd known me for decades. And then I was chosen by these women who know what it's like to medal time and time and time again. Yeah. So for all of that to happen, for me to be even aware of the possibility of carrying the flag on the same day that I didn't make a fourth Olympic final was the gift of my life. And I could not believe that through 2 rounds of voting of all of Team USA, I did get chosen for the absolute honor, because I've also lived in Colorado Springs and been at Olympic and Paralympic training centers for 15 years. So I've seen not only Olympians, but Paralympians in every phase of their journeys of preparing for this biggest moment of their lives. And for it to be an entire team vote in Tokyo just absolutely blew me away. It's the honor of my lifetime.
I don't know if you can tell, but I'm also crying.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
That it must have been, I mean, I'll phrase this as a more as a question than a statement. Was it hard to walk away?
It, I mean, yes, because I came back, right? But the flag bearer vote, even the team captain vote, I think I would have gotten there without being flag bearer. But for women, for teammates to see me, to choose me, to believe in me in this way, like I know that that election isn't about my athletic performance, right? But I just felt this deep sense of acceptance. Like I like to say, I had to be beat over the head with acceptance by the flag bearer vote to finally like feel that. And that's on me. Like I know that they felt that way before this vote, like all of that. Like I needed to do the self-reflection of I belong here, all of that stuff, because them telling me that is finally what, okay, I can do this one more time on my terms, make some decisions that really are true to me and how I want to spend this final season. Because my first World Championship team, 2009, I watched a German woman, Steffi Nereus, who then I got to have a barbecue at her house like the next season. She had always been like my idol. Like I watched her on VHS tapes win multiple other Olympic and World Championship medals when I was in high school. But she'd announced her retirement in 2009, Berlin World Championships on home soil, and she won. Like she'd never won a major, she'd gotten other medals. And so she had said, I'm done after this year, iced the field in the first round, and walked away with a gold medal. And so that first Worlds experience, like seeing that and then knowing that Eugene World Championships would happen in 2022. I grew up in Washington. It's in Oregon. Like, this is perfect. This is what I want my final experience to be. So I think it took that level of 13 years of visualizing something like that, like seeing Steffi do it and then knowing I want to be Steffi Nereus in this scenario. I didn't quite get there. I didn't quite win, but that is what, like, that very clear picture of an idyllic final world championships for so many years is what turned into my confidence on the runway in qualifying to make the final and then in the final. But I couldn't have gotten there without um my teammates like showing me that acceptance. Like it was a huge part of me saying like, how dare I not believe in myself one more time if they do. And the way that they celebrated me after the medal was the same thing because it was all the same people, right? Men and women on the track team. Just seeing me in my 10th try finally get it done on my last opportunity was really, really fun to turn around a year after being their flag bearer and like, I I got this too. Like you did this for me. Thank you so much for showing me how to believe in myself. So yeah.
I saw that it was your last throw.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really going out on top.
Yes, and it wasn't my last throw of my career. That is the YouTube like headline says in her final throw ever. Close, but not quite. Um, Kelsey Lee Barber of Australia was winning and crushed the field, like absolutely, yeah. But she and the other Australians, like throughout my career, have been like just wonderful competitors, but friends off the runway, like at dinners, at meets, and all that stuff. And she's the only ever woman to defend a world championship title. So being her friend, knowing that she was leading, being so proud of her, but also again having such a clear vision of what that final throw could be from Steffi Nereus 13 years earlier, and knowing like it is the final effort opportunity. Like it just removed all fear, all doubt, all hesitation from my technique. And part of the magic of that season was that I chose Russ to be my coach, my husband, who'd had such good input on my career for a long time, but I was finally ready to listen to it as a wife. And we spent so many years being athletes together. Like I just missed him in this part of my life, and I wanted to travel the world together one more time in the sport of track and field because we'd lived in Europe together in the summers for multiple seasons, like when we were both athletes. And it's just how we met. It's what we shared forever. And I wanted to share it one more time. And it just made every moment so much fun, so much full circle energy, and such an opportunity to like finally be heard in ways that I hadn't felt like I could express myself with other coaches. Like, this is somebody who loves me unconditionally. I can say what I need to say and I know it's going to be okay. And we might revisit it later at home after practice, but it just was such a freedom in the coach athlete relationship. And to kind of take him on this journey when I know he'd had his own frustrations, his own disappointments was also really cool. So I felt a lot of that, but it wasn't weight. It was just like two confidences. And that made a huge difference for me, especially on that last throw. Like, we are here, my parents are here, we're there 2 hours from home. They always drive their motorhome like 2 hours down the road to stay at the same RV park in Eugene. And it was just so comfortable. The stadium was incredible. I was the only thing happening in that moment, but it was absolutely packed. And Russ and I talked about it was all guts that last throw. There's a little bit of technique, but it was mostly like, I just want this so badly, and it's my final opportunity. So it has to happen right now. Yeah, to finally have that immediacy and have no way around it. There is not another world championship opportunity, is what made it happen. But again, I had to be beat over the head with acceptance, and I needed that mountain of like, it is the final shot to actually make it happen. I have no regrets though.
I saw that you had called it Hayward Field Magic that happened that day.
Yeah,
You
that it's a
stand by
pretty,
that.
yeah, it's a pretty ubiquitous thing. Like, many athletes have that experience at Hayward. It's not just me. And it happened for many Americans at that world championship, which was super cool. But I had that many different times. I actually ranked my Hayward Magic moments. They're on my Instagram, like, story highlights. Like, I had competed there 13 times before this Olympic trials in 2024. And I don't know how I would rank this one, but I went from like least magical to most magical, and 2022 was for sure top of the list. So,
And then outside of sport, can you talk to me about your relationship with Parity and kind of what the organization stands for?
so I got to work with Parity from the outset. They launched in 2020. I was part of the athlete advisory group to launch the company. Like, what do women athletes need? How can we build this so that we are serving them? They hired me full time after I tore my ACL the second time, which was really incredible from just consistency, stability standpoint, financial and emotional. Like, what else do I have going on? How can I focus my energy so that I'm not just worried about my knee all the time? Like, it was really wonderful. And it's not weird to me that my best 2 seasons ever were as a full-time employee with a company that their values aligned. Like, I like to say, you can put all your eggs in all of your baskets. Pursue multiple dreams at once. That is how I got involved with them. Parity is an intentional sponsorship matching platform for women athletes only. So, what do you want to do as a woman who is an athlete? Call Parity. They can help you, match you with opportunities that match your values, your interests, your passions. And they're continuing to expand into other areas like professional speaking opportunities. That's mostly what I do with them now, because I left that position last October just from a personal, I want to explore other industries. It became pretty clear to me that sponsorship marketing from a professional side is not something that I love. And their support this past year has been really, really wonderful, not just from a professional speaking opportunity standpoint, but from a like emotional support standpoint. To quit and still maintain those relationships has been really, really special to me. And they're just doing wonderful work. But Parity was like at the forefront of the women's sports just mania that is happening right now. And they remain a company that can very intentionally help you grow in the ways that you want to grow with companies that support you as a total human. So call them if you're a woman athlete. Mm-hmm.
I love the plug.
Yeah, get in here.
Those are all the questions I have for you. Do you have anything that you think that I missed? Anything that you'd like to talk a little more about? Any tangents you'd like to go down? I am open to whatever.
Well, in 6 minutes, I guess. So I competed this year, and part of that was USATF continued to support me. Like my success in 2022 meant that I was part of the support system that they have in place for 2 more seasons. And I think NGBs like get a lot of slack, uh, depending on who it's from, but I always had such a great relationship with them, with USATF and with the USOPC, living in Colorado Springs, but also just being on the podium at USATF National Championships for 15 years. Like, yeah, I was very clear with them that I didn't plan to throw a javelin again after 2022, but I wanted to retain this support. So I stayed in the drug testing system. They were supportive of that. Me going to trials this year was a very personal journey, but they continued to be really supportive. And it was really fun to kind of fully utilize what that support was by showing up one more time. It was kind of this thank you tour of like USATF for being there in my life. And also personal exploration of like, did I know what my technique was? Like you asked if it was hard to walk away. It wasn't hard to walk away going out on top. Like I didn't miss the nerves at all. The fact that I threw a personal best at the end of 2022 after 12 seasons of not doing it, like that is all that I needed in this world. But I never made an Olympic final. And so I thought, like, if I'm training because I miss it, because I love the process, I'm actually training to shoot this how-to video for coaches and athletes if they want to purchase it at the end of this week. So that is what I trained for. Like, I want to pass on the knowledge that I gained from 23 years of javelin throwing. That's what I trained for. But I said to my strength coach, if I feel good, I reserve the right to compete one more time. And I felt really good. And I was just so inspired by women across many sports that were doing things that like shouldn't have been possible. So I want to try too. And it was just, it was so special to show up to Eugene, be received well, throw far, be so confident in my process that like it didn't matter if I made a fifth Olympic team or not. I just wanted to prove to myself that I knew what I was doing technically, that I was a master of my craft. And I absolutely did that and loved just spectating the Paris Olympics. Like got really close to a fifth team, but to prove to myself that I didn't need that outcome of a fifth team and feel so at peace, like after making the podium, but not throwing the standard that I needed to go was just it felt like finally the perfect way to end my career. Like I was happy to leave after 2022. I was even happier to leave after this Olympic trials. And I'm really glad I tried.
Yeah. I mean, to go out totally on your own terms is so powerful.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Because both of them were my terms, right? And I think that's the lesson. Like people are like, how could you stop after being #1 in the world? Because I want to. And then I get to come back, even though I said I was going to stop, because I also want to do that. And now I get to leave again because I want to, because I'm all set, because I have like no more curiosity about who I am in this context as an athlete. I've answered all of my own questions. And yeah, I encourage people who haven't to explore them again in whatever way they need to, because you're in charge of your own destiny for sure.